It's my pleasure to introduce to you Stacey Jenkins.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Great. All right. Today's conversation pertains to communicating with others. And in my professional and academic opinion, the key discussion that we'll utilize to connect with one another is the topic of social justice. Now, as a retired homicide detective slash hostage negotiator, I will discuss key aspects of a negotiator in a civilian-friendly structure. Moreover, I have implemented 3 poems from my unpublished manuscript titled Outside My Mind, Dirt on the Badge. The first poem is titled The Legal System for Black Men. The second and third poem are a 2-part series titled Law Enforcement is a Noble Profession. All poems were written using what I've witnessed both as a law enforcement official and as a Black man. I've implemented these poems at the beginning, middle, and end of each speech. Therefore, let me just start by saying that I support law enforcement and it is a noble profession. However, the job description of a police officer in the United States is exceptionally antiquated and needs to change with the times, struggles, and impediments associated with today's society. Therefore, let's jump in it with the legal system for Black men. Young Black male whistles at white lady. Boy goes missing, now it gets crazy. White men crept into the house like a thief in the night, snatched his body up so fast, so quick, no time to fight. August 28, 1955 was the day of his death. Open casket, yet no face left. Ebony and Jet took photos displaying what was done. His mother wanted the world to see what they had did to her son. It's been 66 years since the death of Emmett Till. The suspects were not found not guilty. How the heck am I supposed to feel? As a police officer, I've seen Black men get stopped by racist cops for not having a license plate light. I've seen white men get mere warnings by the police for slapping that same cop and also sleeping with his wife. All true stories. White justice is kind, forgiving, and fashionable. Black justice is evasive, lethal, and uncharitable. White justice, you can flip off a cop if they cut you off in traffic. Black justice is like PTSD. It's broken, chronic, and most times manic. White justice allows you to reach for your cell phone. Black justice gets sent to where the angels roam. White justice, defense attorneys make backdoor deals with the prosecution. Black justice, it's a phrase missing from the American Constitution. So let's begin. How do we understand and communicate with hostility? Evading this issue is not the solution, since we all must at some point talk to or work with individuals who are incensed. Those interactions can be challenging, so I would like to discuss a method which may assist in accomplishing these goals. Caution. Individuals express and experience aggression in many forms. Therefore, our reactions will vary. I'm here to have a conversation with you regarding a method which will allow us to communicate with individuals in a situation of aggression. Active listening is a style that is utilized in areas of rapport building and counseling. Active listening involves the listener to fully concentrate, understand, respond, and then remember what is being said. Listening skills establish flow rather than closed-mindedness. Active listening is opposite from other listening techniques, such as empathetic and reflective listening. Now, reflective listening is when the listener repeats what the speaker just mentioned to confirm that both parties understand. Empathetic listening is about giving others a passage for one's emotions. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to accept new perspectives on troubling topics that cause emotional suffering? Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We already have these gifts. The man upstairs gave us this gift, so let's start sharing it with the world. Active listening is strategically vital, serving as an integral part of any effective and successful leader. With the current social unrest in the United States, it is evident politicians, their advisors, policymakers, and representatives of law enforcement are lacking these skills. These groups instead become defensive and reactive, which instigates even more public outcry with damages and violence on the streets. Today, we're going to highlight the prospects of active listening associated with empathy, open-mindedness, and avoidance of interruption. Dealing with an adverse crowd in today's world, one should bear in mind that something went wrong initially, and it is still falling short of any positive results. As a retired hostage negotiator, I utilized active listening skills for more than 23 years. The FBI, in my professional and academic opinion, are the architects of modern active listening skills. They use it in hostage negotiations, interviewing methods, and crisis situations. After I retired from law enforcement, I found myself using active listening skills in all aspects of my life. And if used consistently, you should see promising results. Therefore, I'm here today to offer you an alternative approach from a person who has a different idea of how to take an adverse situation and turn it into a path of rationality. What I have to say today is continuous in its complexity, but what it suggests is vital. People, we live in a world which consists of unstable social and political settings. We need strong leadership, and strong leadership starts with the ability to recognize core details and issues, challenges, and opportunities. This is possible when leaders have a good grasp of active listening skills. Don't get me wrong. What I have to say is not just about listening, but rather listening with a perspective of recognizing the problem and then knowing what others would say in their approach to resolve this issue. Active listening is a discrete fashion which serves to improve infrastructure with a person or a group. The goal is to introduce different methods of communication through open-ended questions, rapport building, dialogue, research, and observation, all for the sake of reaching a behavioral change through encouragement and a harmonious atmosphere of cohesiveness and understanding. Active listening skills also serves to reduce the emotional tensions and outbursts when a leader encourages more interaction and interactive adjustments. January 6th. It enables us to collect enough data and additional information to set the record straight. And a variety of goals can be attained with active listening skills. However, the main task is to just focus on how, rather than what a person says. For example, the tone of their voice, demeanor, the use of pauses and tracking of emotions during communication are essential goals within the DNA of active listening. As a listener, this is time to introduce a more meaningful and focused method of communication. One should use paraphrasing to describe an overall meaning of the conversation in your own words. This allows the person who is speaking to you know that you're listening. Therefore, it is practical to keep repeating some of the main words said by another person. This ensures that the perspectives of the conversation are covered. The current situation in the United States after the tragic death of George Floyd instigated much physical and verbal aggression in our streets, making America full of social disorder and public unrest. The recent misconducts by a small, and I said small percent of our country's law enforcement officials has caused emotional surge by the citizens they swore to protect. More's the pity. Subsequent to the death of George Floyd, America's streets became filled with so many aggrieved and intense citizens. Notice, I choose to say the word aggrieved rather than angry because it is comfortable and easy to call someone angry when you don't understand their frustration. However, the word aggrieved represents adjectives such as wrong, offended, or injured. So for the remainder of this talk, I will use the word aggrieved. At this moment, it had become clear to the rest of the world that something is wrong with countries' interdisciplinary approaches and now calls for justice to become more willingly. Okay, let's take a break and allow me to introduce to you part one of Law Enforcement is a Noble Profession. They seem to be the tormentors of our dreams. This was ignited by wannabe Marines. You're supposed to be our protectors, that's the reality. So why do you come into our community with this warrior mentality? In the academy, they trained us to have that warrior mindset, and I apologize, training you to believe that all inner city civilians are insider threats. You're not in the military, Mr. Officer, you're the police. Your job is to protect and serve by maintaining the peace. Law enforcement is a noble profession. So why can't we get better recruit selections? I hate to say it, but good old boys on the selection committee act like they know what's best for the inner city. How do you expect to understand current cultural boundaries when you and your family live in another county? During your 8-hour shift, you drive around in our community, depriving us of equity and justice, all with impunity. Allow me to break down this disconnection. You don't shop at our stores, attend our churches. Shall I continue with the lack of connection? Your children attend different schools. You don't play by the rules, looking at our homes and deeming them cesspools. Law enforcement is a noble profession. So why can't we get better recruit selections? Good old boys are on the selection committee like they know what's best for the inner city. You play with people's lives and you do it for enjoyment. You say you're part of the community, yet you don't reside within your place of employment. Disconnection, no service, no protection, no connection, no affection. Just the boys in blue with a case of rejection infection. But hey, let's just call it for what it really is, a brutal insurrection. How much longer will citizens have to suffer? Wouldn't it be beautiful to see qualified officers of color? Now back to the talk. The country became divided. Citizens started adhering to the laws of the streets where the fittest survived. And on the other side of this pandemonium, some groups united to protect their homes, businesses, and communities from looters and demonstrators surfing on the wave of public outcry. These individuals who follow the ideal of establishing justice through civil unrest don't even try to realize or evaluate the root cause of the whole problem. In the negotiations between the government, law enforcement, and its citizens, the missing link relates to the inability or direct disregard of active listening. Politicians, law enforcement, and public figures seem to follow the wrong meaning of active listening. Said individuals choose to incorporate their judgments, counterattacks, pieces of advice, and values to a conversation. And in return, they receive an intense reaction from the public. However, it is more important to focus on the feelings, values, and demands of the opposite parties. They need someone to listen to them, someone influential and responsible. And in this respect, empathy is essential to identify and justify someone's feelings pertaining to real-life circumstances. And this can only be possible when leaders are receptive to different views from the ones who suffer from a fundamental socio-political problem, which has existed far longer than all of us have been on this earth. First, know how to calm yourself when you're talking to the aggrieved. I say to the leaders of this so-called free country, you must understand that these are individuals who are hurting, whose tempers are no longer a significant starting point of their behavioral reactions. And when this happens, this could lead to individuals thinking they have nothing to lose. Therefore, the unsurpassed methods in a troubling situation is to start by active, empathetic listening, avoiding defensive arguments, and establishing goals to persuade the contrasting parties. Listening to the voices of diverse people during times of ongoing racial unrest is a matter of great responsibility. It is critical to recognize the significance of other people's views and what they're saying, perceiving them equal and straight to the point regarding the overall situations and its issues. Letting people voice their concerns and emotional surges is absolutely imperative during the process of active listening. It gives grounds to building trust and furthering relationships as the conflicting parties starts to make sure their voices matter. Mutual trust is mandatory when shedding light on issues from someone else's perspective, even if talking about the collective idea of what Black Lives Matter as a movement embodies. It's all about recognizing one's indignation, ladies and gentlemen, which does not require complexity, just active listening. This is the exact same outlook police and politicians should take when dealing with an aggrieved group. It is highly unlikely that chaotic transformation and upfront hostility will lead to a positive change. And it is naive to think this way or to keep menacing the protesters and other involved individuals. For the sake of rapport building and mutual cohesiveness, communicating in a setting of confrontation should be non-threatening and without imposing your own judgment. I'm sorry, I don't mean to snicker, but why is it that people of power and influence tend to anticipate feeling their own significance by sharing their own messages about this problem and then suggesting their own solutions as well? Like change the name of a building. To be frank, no one wants to hear your solutions regarding the problems of others right now. I say it is time for the people in the streets to be heard. How is it conceivable, ladies and gentlemen, that the ones responsible for our country's social disarray and the ones able to resolve it can't even hear the cries from the people they are supposed to protect and serve? The main task is to listen actively, making searching, understand, and orchestrate all the pieces together to develop an optimistic depiction of the issue. This approach is better served when we disregard our desires to want to squabble with a hostile crowd. Strategies of communication require significant variations. Therefore, we must reroute these strategies onto a path of decision-making, further interaction, and collaborate with the community. Personally, knowing the situation from the inside out, by having a direct relation to the law enforcement profession as a retired police officer, more importantly, as a Black man, I would suggest looking for more advisors from different fields to introduce an interdisciplinary and cross-cultural approach to the issue. Ladies and gentlemen, everything matters in this context, but the primary role should go to active listening, full of empathy and acceptance of diversity. Active listening techniques are designed to allow an unreceptive group transform into a consistent community, open to negotiations and rational conclusions. Aggrieved individuals in the so-called free country want more understanding, and it starts with the state of being understood, with no interruptions or any of your judgments in response. Everybody has a voice, and everyone has something to say. Let us start showing appreciation and value to their voices. Our streets cry of independent values, ideas of equity, serenity, and cooperation. Hence, there's a critical point of suspending one's judgment and turning to active listening, which is open within the scope of ability for effective and rational leaders. Our country's agreed want to be understood. So by indicating your purpose to halt your own judgment and recognize the aggrieved individuals for what they are and not becoming angry at yourself, we as a society can help diffuse a hostile situation. Active listening is comprised of a cognizant effort from the listener to reserve one's desire and to understand the means of a grieved community. So to wrap this up, I like to end this with part 2 of my poem, Law Enforcement is a Noble Profession. Law enforcement is a noble profession. So why can't we hire better recruit selections? Good old boys on that selection committee, like they know what's best for the inner city. What's wrong with asking police applicants their racial viewpoints? Instead, they train us in the academy to interview people while at gunpoint. Black people don't like us, says the boys in blue. But it's the way you treat the community, and still you have no clue. How come your kids don't go to school with our kids, heaven forbid? How come you can't tell the difference between someone from Puerto Rico or Madrid? You troll a license plate to see someone's past, then follow that vehicle, wait for a traffic infraction, light them up, nah, I got you at last. Law enforcement is a noble profession. So why can't we get better recruit selections? Because good old boys are still on that selection committee acting like they know what's best for the inner city. You ask lame questions during your interview process, and it's time to allow the civilians to enter this mess. Unless you want to hear no justice, no peace, it would behoove you to take care when you interview, select, and hire new police. Does their personal references reflect a people of color? Does their background checks reflect a connection with people you deem as other? If you're a city official and you're not woke, then it's you, my friend, whose cultural compass is broke. I'm Crux Conception, which is a pseudonym for crisis intervention, and I thank you for the privilege of your time.
Thank you, Stacey. Appreciate your patience in while you're navigating this virtual platform. So thank you for speaking to us today. We thank you for viewing and your patience again as we continue our 16th biennial reunion. Again, I want to thank our sponsors, First Merchants Bank, Demita Williams, and the Office of Institutional Excellence. And I want to encourage each of you to click on that link if you've not given your donations to the Black Alumni Constituent Society Scholarship Fund. So please click on that link. I want to encourage everyone to hang around. In about 10 minutes, we're going to ask you to return to the main stage for an exciting women's panel today. So you can return to the main stage in order to participate and listen in on the discussion. And in the meanwhile, you can check out our virtual tours of the new edition on campus, and you can find those links on the agenda tab of the platform. So at this time, we are going to sign off temporarily, and we want you to return again to the main stage in 10 minutes. Thank you.